It is my honor and distinct pleasure to be joined right now by Congressman Louie Gohmert. So, how did Verback and the FDA respond to this letter?
Well, that's interesting, Dale. Uh, Thank you for noting they're good questions. They're
Yeah,
important questions. We're talking about the lives of our children. These aren't people at the end of their lives. They haven't had their lives yet. They're just getting started. And the FDA has been totally silent, no response other than to say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and approve the jab for 5 years of age and under. And we keep coming, I really appreciate you reading the part about how the percentage of these children, they're already positive for
right,
having had this. They've got it in their system, and
right,
so they've got antibodies. Surely they're this is how you get to herd immunity.
right.
And yet they're saying, gee, there may be 30% of these children or less. So we want to mandate the vaccination for all of them. And we're finding out there's all kinds of conditions that they're now at risk for by virtue of having the vaccination. And one right off the bat, you're these 5 years and unders, uh, they're 5 times more likely to have myocarditis.
Yeah,
We've never had a vaccine where the FDA was so calloused about how many people were hurt or killed. But then again, in my lifetime, I'm not aware of any vaccination where they look the other way, that they have kept the emergency use authorization going when there's really no emergency now.
yeah,
We have reached the level, and really, this was one of the things when I heard about Omicron. People were going, "Oh my gosh, we're going to have another shutdown." People,
right.
mainly Democrats, but people were going, "Oh, we're going to have more shutdowns, shut down business." I'm going, "No, no, this Omicron is an answer to prayer. This is a variant where you're more likely to catch it,
Yep.
and it's not killing people. Very, very, very few people." And so this is where we hoped it would go, because there was a danger we could have had a variant that was just as contagious and it
Yeah,
killed people.
yeah.
And that
Well,
didn't happen. So it was giving that herd immunity and helping that get around. But now we're hearing from physicians that actually this mRNA vaccination, with each booster, it makes it more and more difficult to have antibodies attack the new variant.
yeah,
And so you're more susceptible to the new variants. But especially when you read about and you hear about the conditions that may be coming.
yeah,
So what we know about medicine, and we know about uh, judgment on whether or not to give consent after you're informed of the risks inherent to any procedure, any vaccination. We know you weigh the risks as compared to the rewards.
yes,
And this informed consent notion, Dell, I know you're a smart guy,
yeah,
but I had read that medical historians say somewhere around 100 years ago, maybe before the end of World War One, but right in there were some protocols that came out. They think that may have been a factor. But medical historians have said for the first time in all of human history, you had a better chance of getting well after seeing a doctor than you did of getting sicker.
right.
Well, you think about the thousands of years of recorded history, and just in that period, we we only have the last 100 years where you have a better chance of getting well after seeing a doctor. And along those lines, along those years, we developed this informed consent for a free people. It is one of the most important medical doctrines that exist, that you get to talk with your physician about your biological makeup, the things you're vulnerable to, you're less vulnerable to, and the risks inherent to whatever is being proposed, whether vaccination or surgery, whatever. And then you get to make the decision whether to go forward. And of course, like surgeries, they have you sign the form and say, I've been advised of all the risks inherent to this. And sometimes they'll put them down. And then you sign that you're willing to assume those risks. And that's one of the problems with this mandated vaccination. You don't get to make an informed consent decision. It's basically forced on you. And these kids, they're kids. That's why we have laws saying they can't agree, they can't enter contracts without the consent of an adult.
Right.
And yet we're going to have the government say, we think these kids should have this shot mandated, even though they're 5 times more likely to have myocarditis, have other debilitating conditions arise. And I know you know, but the emergency use authorization, it just can't be overemphasized. That brings with it total immunity to the pharmaceuticals that manufactured the vaccination, and also all of the healthcare providers that stuck you with it. Well, that's not the way things have gone. We have a very enlightened judicial system where if somebody fails to inform you of the risks inherent, just fails to inform you, and you suffer at all, you can sue them for that. And if someone forces you to do something that you didn't want to do and you have any damage at all, then you get to sue over that. This emergency use authorization totally
it throws our entire system into the garbage can. Yeah, I mean, it just destroys how our system works, a free market system. I'm sitting here, I mean, I have to say, Representative Gohmert, I'm blown away, as I think much of our audience, many of whom are parents of children who've been injured previously, we have been trying to get politicians to look at the subject, to talk about the subject, to have you here now saying the things that you're saying. It's like the clouds have parted and the sunlight is shining down on us, because though this seems like such reasonable information, our government has seriously denied any conversation like the one that we're having right here. So can I just ask you, what was it that triggered it for you? Like at what moment did you say, hold on a second, something's wrong here? What was that sort of aha moment for you?
Well, Dale, there were many factors that caused concerns along the way. As a lawyer, I defended medical malpractice cases. This was back before I was a judge and chief justice before Congress. And there were a couple in which I was representing the plaintiff, but mainly malpractice defense. So these are all things that are quite familiar to me. These are legal mechanisms that we see utilized constantly. But there was a moment, and it was when a pharmacist friend said, have you seen the warnings that come in the package with the vial of the vaccine? And I said, no. And Dale, he got it out, and you've seen these probably thousands of times, because they have to have the warnings with any product, whether it's an insecticide, whatever it is, it's got to have warnings on it. I mean, you get any engine oil, whatever, it's going to have warnings here. Don't drink this, whatever you need to be warned about, it's on there. And sometimes, they'll tell you, there'll be warnings, don't put this electric fan in your bath water, whatever.
Things you never thought you'd have to warn people about, but it's all there.
Yeah, right. But you do.
Yeah.
But you have to warn people because somebody was stupid enough to do whatever you were being warned about.
Yeah.
So he took out the little bitty, it's folded up into a tiny thing so it fits in the little bitty box
Yeah.
that has the vial of vaccine in it. He pulls it out and I pull it out, and you can see it was for a specific vaccine. It was actually the Johnson and Johnson, but it says which vaccine it is, and it says for emergency use authorization. Well, that tells you they have complete immunity.
Right.
So then I start opening it up, and it ends up being huge, and it's totally blank on both sides, except for that little bitty rectangle where it tells you it's Johnson & Johnson for emergency use authorization. And I went, they know about things that are a risk with this vaccine. Where are all the warnings? And he said, it's right there in the words emergency use authorization. Because it says emergency use authorization that's been provided by the FDA, they don't have to warn you about anything, because no matter what happens, they're completely immune. So, Dale, to answer the question specifically,
That would trigger.
and I've never been asked that question before, but
Yeah.
that was really the big wake up. Oh my gosh, I've never, ever in my life, and I'm talking about as a judge, I tried so many cases, but there's no warnings whatsoever. And that's one of the questions that you read. You've got hundreds of thousands of pages of documented problems. What are they? Let's
and all you're
see
handing to the
them.
public is a giant, clean, blank
Yes.
piece of paper. Look, I want to show everybody, because obviously you're so in this now, you're so passionate about it, that when you didn't get a response to this totally reasonable letter, you went and signed up to be one of the speakers at the VRBPAC meeting. That's the Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee. And I have that recording. So if you would indulge us just for a couple more minutes, let's play exactly what you said to the FDA at the VRBPAC meeting. Here it is.
The next speaker is Congressman Louie Gohmert. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. There are many unanswered questions regarding the safety and efficacy of COVID vaccines, especially for babies and young children. I'm deeply concerned that the push to vaccinate these children is nothing more than a dystopian experiment with unknown consequences. Some of us have outlined these questions in a letter to VRBPAC, but have not received any answers, and I'll post some of them here. The letter's at my website, gohmert.house.gov, and my Twitter account, at Rep. Louie Gohmert. But number one, why has the FDA refused to release the hundreds of thousands of pages of data from pre-approval manufacturer studies, post-approval adverse events data, and other post-approval manufacturer data? Number two, what is the cardiac risk factor in administering these COVID vaccines to children? Number three, would world-renowned immunologists have raised concerns about potential antibody-dependent enhancement, ADE, resulting from COVID vaccines? And since ADE was a problem in prior unrelated respiratory vaccine trials, we need to know what studies, if any, the FDA has that it's used regarding potential ADE from COVID vaccines in children 5 and under, or any age group. Can the FDA affirm that there's no risk of ADE for vaccinated children? Number four, if approved and widely used among children 5 and under, how many lives, if any, does FDA estimate will be saved next year? Given the injuries reported in the FDA's VAERS system, how will FDA evaluate serious vaccine injuries versus serious COVID outcomes? Number five, is it possible that the proposed COVID vaccines in young children would create increased risk from future novel COVID variants? Number six, why has the FDA recently lowered the efficacy bar for COVID vaccines for youngest children? This change significantly lowers the expected benefits from any COVID vaccination for young children, and it's of particular concern given that over 70% of that age cohort are already seropositive. These questions and others are critical and deserve thorough answers by FDA and VRBPAC prior to any emergency use authorization with the accompanying protection from liability for all harm done. In conclusion, some of us have grave concerns that in balancing the risks to rewards here, all the risks are to the innocent children and all the billions of dollars of rewards go to the government-protected pharmaceuticals, leaving me to wonder if Republicans get a majority, may need to have a bill, I'm working on it now, to allow civil and criminal liability to vaccine providers and accessories despite an EUA, which should force more sensitivity to vaccine harm to our young children. We've got to care more about the children, and I appreciate the time to express this.
Wow. I mean, there's so much that we could unpack there, a lot of what we've discussed on this show. But I want to say to you, the way you end that is truly a shot across the bow in many ways, and one that we've wanted to see happen for a very long time. You know, I personally have said to people, you know, in this movement that are trying to get more transparency in the science around this, I think I would be willing to walk away. I ruined my television career getting into the middle of this conversation around vaccine safeties, but it's really down to this liability protection. I keep saying, look, if you would just put liability back on the manufacturer, if this product is so great, if it is so safe and so effective, then, you know, and you're making tens of billions of dollars on each vaccine right now. So if it's like a 1 in a million injury that you're telling us about, I'm pretty sure you can afford the lawsuit on the 1 in a million. So why is there this liability protection? To me, if we could just make that adjustment and get America back on track, back to, you know, natural market forces, we could right this ship. We could get back to trusting our regulatory agencies. I mean, they are so afoul now with the population. It's amazing when you watch these meetings that they do not see that the country's leaving them. The confidence in not only the COVID vaccine, but the entire vaccine program is in shambles, and yet they keep driving forward with these protections. Here's my question to you. I've been talking to politicians over the last 5 or 6 years, congressmen, senators, state representatives, federal representatives, and I can't tell you how many times I would say, you know that vaccines have liability protection. You cannot sue the manufacturer. And they would look at me like I was lying. And so my question to you, is this an understanding that is starting to be more well understood amongst your colleagues? That, I mean, is everyone aware that you cannot sue the manufacturer, that it's like the only product like it in this country? Or is this work that, as we of the viewers and your constituents, do we need to do a better job talking to our representatives about this? Where's the climate right now on that conversation?
Well, enough people do not understand that there is complete immunity to the pharmaceuticals, to the providers that provide these. And so you have put your finger right on the pulse of what will make or break the situation. Like you said, Dale, if this is so great, then you should not have any fear about liability. If you cause liability, then, you know, you own up to it. And if you've got the document that shows they were warned in advance that these were possibilities, they signed on assuming the risk of the inherent risk of the procedure, in this case vaccination, then they're out of luck. They can't sue. The immunity's there. But until you actually warn people, you should not be immune. And the direct answer to your question is no. People are not understanding the extent of the immunity that these pharmaceuticals, raking in the billions and billions of dollars, they're getting giddy. And I think they're beginning to be a bit like the character in Lord of the Rings. Mine, you know, they're this is their gold ring here, and they're not going to give it up, and they're not going to allow immunity to be taken away from them. So it's a little scary This is not like anything that has happened in medicine in the last 130 years or so. This is very different, and we're throwing risk, out the door and saying too bad about the risk. And I tell you, being someone who's been vocal about this, I hear about things, but one was from a guy that works here with me. He had a cousin in West Virginia who got the vaccination and immediately developed blood clots and died very quickly. And he had been treated for some other things and had no blood clots. They knew that.
Wow.
He gets the vaccination, immediately filled up with blood clots and died. So his personal physician put down on the death certificate the cause of death was the vaccination. And he was immediately verbally assaulted by the local health officer saying, you can't put that the cause of death was the vaccination. And he said, there's no question in my mind it was the vaccination. I'm not going to remove it. And the widow was upset because clearly it was the vaccination. But then they continued to hear from government officials that they would not certify the death certificate as long as the cause of death was listed as the vaccination.
Wow.
And if you've lost people you love, to even pick up and start, you can't transfer money from accounts. You can't transfer ownership of your car. You've got to have a death certificate to get life going again. And so she finally caved and said, look, just get me a death certificate. I can't stay in limbo like this. So they took the vaccination off as the cause of death. Well, Dale, you got to wonder, how many times has this played out? How many times has VAERS gotten this kind of information and they just sit on it, kill it? How much of this is in the hundreds of thousands of pages that they will not let us see? So we've got a lot more to find out, but there are too many people in Congress that have not realized just what the immunity does. And then eventually, as people continue, they persist in providing this immunity to the pharmaceuticals. You wonder eventually, are you getting a bunch of money from these people too? I mean, is this what's happening? Because, as Rush Limbaugh always said, just follow the money, just follow the money.
Well, look, I know you're working on a bill to get to the bottom of this, to really put liability back on the manufacturer. I want to let you know here at the Highwire, we are not a political organization. I don't choose sides. I will get behind any politician there is that will just get back to the market forces, treat vaccines just like you treat every other drug we take in this country. Go ahead, do the proper safety trials that can make you feel confident about your product. But once you put it out to the people, it's on you if it kills, injures, and maims people. The government should not be making a business of protecting, things like that. The VAERS system, death records, things like that. This is, I think, when we think about the problems in our government, nothing is really representing that more. And to be honest, if we do not correct these things, and I know you know this, the voting public, the population of America is going to lose all faith, not just in our healthcare systems, in our medical systems, but our government itself. We are seeing the deaths. Everyone's on Facebook. They're on Twitter. We're seeing our neighbors' children die for no reason. We're seeing them fall face first in the soccer field or the football field and being carted off when that's never happened before. So I want to thank you for your time today. I hope we can keep this dialogue open. I want you to keep me abreast of how this bill goes along. And I just want you to know that our audience of now over 6 million people worldwide, millions here in America, and growing every day, is behind you 100%. Please write that law. Please work on getting that passed. And we will do everything to talk to every senator and congressman in this country to support you in that work, okay?
Well, and I would suggest, Dale, talk to a pharmacist friend and get a copy of the warnings off one of these vaccines and you can show your audience. It really is breathtaking to see that much blank paper. And I said to the pharmacist, why is all this? At first, as I said, he said, well, it's the emergency use authorization.
Yeah.
I said, then why do they have all this blank paper? And he said, well, that they apparently have warnings to fill all of that if they're ever required to post them. Well, if they've got that much in the way of small font warnings, they need to put them on that paper.
You're absolutely right. Congressman Louie Gohmert, thank you for the time. Thank you for serving the people at a time where so few people are doing it. And we will talk with you soon. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Bless you. Thanks so much.
All right.